What happens when one of the most scrutinized women in the world sits down for what she thinks will be a friendly interview, only to find herself facing the most uncomfortable questions of her life? The tension in the Good Morning America studio was thick enough to cut with a knife as Meghan Markle settled into the plush interview chair across from Michael Strahan. What started as a routine promotional appearance quickly spiraled into television gold and chaos. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because you're about to witness one of the most jaw-dropping interviews in recent memory. The morning had begun like any other at the GMA studios in Times Square. Meghan arrived with her usual entourage designer outfit, perfectly pressed, smile camera ready. She was there to discuss her latest charitable initiative, expecting softball questions and pleasant banter. Michael Strahan, veteran host known for his easygoing demeanor and sports background, seemed like the perfect interviewer for a smooth promotional segment. "Meghan, wonderful to have you here this morning," Michael began, his trademark smile warm and welcoming. "Tell us about this new project you're so passionate about." Meghan's response was polished, rehearsed. "Thank you for having me, Michael. This initiative is really close to my heart. We're focusing on empowering young women to find their voices, especially those who feel marginalized or unheard." "That's beautiful," Michael nodded. "Speaking of finding voices, there's been quite a bit of discussion about your own voice over the years. Some people feel you've been very vocal about certain issues, while others say you've held back. How do you balance speaking your truth with, let's say, family considerations?" The first crack appeared in Meghan's composure. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "I think everyone deserves to tell their story authentically. Michael, when you've experienced what I've experienced, staying silent isn't really an option." "Right. But authenticity can be subjective, can't it?" Michael leaned forward slightly. "I mean, there have been some contradictions over the years. In one interview, you mentioned not knowing much about the royal family before marrying Harry. But then later, we hear about childhood dreams of being a princess. How do you reconcile those different narratives?" The studio fell silent. Camera operators glanced at each other. This wasn't in the pre-approved question list. Meghan's jaw tightened. "I think you're mischaracterizing what I said, Michael. Context matters. When you're a young girl, you have fantasies about fairy tales. That's very different from having detailed knowledge about the actual workings of an institution." "Fair enough," Michael replied, but his tone had shifted. Gone was the easy morning show warmth. "But speaking of institutions, there's been a lot of talk about your relationship with the media. You've spoken about feeling attacked, yet you've also done several high-profile interviews and projects. Some might say you can't have it both ways, wanting privacy while also maintaining a very public presence. What's your response to that?" Meghan's publicist, standing off camera, made a subtle cutting motion across her throat, but Michael wasn't backing down, and neither was Meghan. "That's an incredibly unfair characterization." Meghan's voice rose slightly. "There's a difference between choosing when and how to share your story versus having lies and vitriol spread about you daily. The fact that you're even asking that question shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what harassment actually looks like." "I'm not trying to misunderstand anything," Michael countered. "I'm asking questions that a lot of people have. For instance, the timing of certain revelations, the way certain stories have been told and retold with different details. As a journalist, I have to ask about consistency." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Meghan's media training was wearing with her genuine frustration, and the cracks were starting to show. "Michael, with all due respect, you're sitting there in your comfortable chair, having never experienced what it's like to have your every word twisted, your every gesture analyzed and criticized. You've never had to worry about your safety or your family's safety because of constant media intrusion and public attacks." "You're right. I haven't," Michael acknowledged. But I have experience being in the public eye, being criticized, having my words taken out of context. It comes with the territory. When you choose a public life, choose. Meghan's voice cracked with emotion. You think I chose to be relentlessly attacked? You think I chose to have my father sell stories about me to tabloids? You think I chose to have former friends leak private conversations? The interview was rapidly spiraling beyond anyone's control. Producers were frantically signaling from behind the cameras, but both Meghan and Michael seemed locked in their confrontation, neither willing to back down. What I'm saying, Michael continued carefully, is that actions have consequences. When you make certain choices, when you tell certain stories, there are going to be responses, some fair, some unfair. But you can't control the narrative completely, and then be surprised when people push back. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair rolling back. Are you seriously suggesting that I brought this on myself? The studio erupted in barely contained chaos as Meghan remained standing, her chest rising and falling with controlled fury. Michael, still seated but clearly uncomfortable with how quickly things had escalated, raised his hands in a gesture meant to be calming. Meghan, please sit down. That's not what I'm saying at all. Michael's voice carried a note of genuine concern. Now I'm trying to have an honest conversation about the complexities of public life. Honest. Meghan's laugh was sharp, bitter. You want honest? Let's be honest about what this really is. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my charity work. But this is clearly an ambush. You're asking me to defend my existence, my choices, my right to speak about my own experiences. She remained standing, towering over the seated host, her designer. Blazer wrinkled now from her abrupt movement. The camera operators were getting footage they never expected, and everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. It's not an ambush, Michael insisted, his own composure beginning to crack. These are legitimate questions that people are asking. As a journalist, it's my job to ask them. Your job? Meghan's voice rose another octave. Your job is supposed to be informing the public, not perpetuating harmful narratives. You're sitting there, a black man in America, asking me why I don't just quietly accept abuse and harassment. Do you not see the irony in that? The racial undertone hung heavy in the air. Michael's expression hardened. Several crew members shifted uncomfortably, knowing this conversation had just entered dangerous territory. Don't you dare try to make this about race, Michael said firmly. Don't you dare use our shared experience as a shield against legitimate criticism. That's exactly the kind of manipulation people are talking about. Manipulation. Meghan's voice cracked with genuine hurt and rage. I'm being manipulative by pointing out that you of all people should understand what it's like to be judged more harshly, to have your words twisted, to be held to different standards. That's not what this is about, Michael shot back, finally rising from his chair to meet her at eye level. This is about accountability. This is about the fact that you've made very serious allegations against people, against an institution. And when people ask for specifics, for proof, for consistency, you deflect. I deflect. Meghan was incredulous. I've been more transparent than any member of that family has ever been. I've shared painful personal details about my mental health, about feeling suicidal, about racism I experienced, and instead of compassion, instead of support, I get interrogated about whether I'm telling the truth. Because your story keeps changing. Michael pressed on, his journalist instincts overriding any concern for maintaining pleasantries. First, you barely knew anything about the royals. Then you had childhood dreams about them. First, you were unaware of the media attention you'd face. Then you talk about researching Harry online. First, you say you weren't prepared for royal life. Then we see evidence of extensive coaching and preparation. Meghan's hands were shaking now. Whether from anger or hurt, it was impossible to tell. You want consistency? Here's consistency. From the moment I started dating Harry, I was subjected to a level of scrutiny and hatred that was unprecedented. Every single thing I did was wrong. The way I held my purse, the way I closed a car door, the color of my nail polish. Nothing was ever good enough. But that's the life you married into. Michael countered. That's the reality of being royal. Diana faced it. Catherine faces it. They all do. The difference is how you've chosen to respond to it. The difference, Meghan's voice was deadly quiet now, is that I'm mixed race. The difference is that I'm American. The difference is that I had a career and opinions before I met Harry. And instead of celebrating those differences, instead of seeing them as strengths, they were treated as threats. Michael paused, sensing he'd pushed too far, but unable to back down completely. Meghan, I understand that you faced unique challenges, but you're not the only person to face adversity, to face criticism, even unfair criticism. What people struggle with is how you've handled it. How I've handled it. Meghan's voice was getting louder again. You mean by speaking up, by refusing to suffer in silence, by protecting my family and my sanity? Because that's what I did, Michael. I chose my well-being and my family's well-being over an institution that was perfectly happy to let me be destroyed as long as it protected them. But at what cost? Michael pressed. Your relationship with your father, your relationship with Harry's family, your reputation, was it worth it? The question hung in the air like a physical blow. Meghan stared at him for a long moment, her eyes filling with tears. She refused to let fall. My relationship with my father was destroyed the moment he chose money over me, she said quietly. My relationship with Harry's family was doomed from the start, because they never wanted me there in the first place. And my reputation was never going to survive, because the narrative was written before I even had a chance to tell my story. So, everyone else is wrong and you're the victim. Michael's question was blunt, perhaps crueler than he intended. Meghan's composure finally completely shattered. The words hit Meghan like a physical slap. Her face went white, then flushed red with a fury that had been building throughout the entire interview. When she spoke, her voice was trembling with barely controlled rage. A victim. She repeated her voice dangerously low. You think I'm playing the victim? Let me tell you something about being a victim, Michael. A victim stays silent. A victim accepts abuse. A victim lets other people control their narrative. I am not a victim. I am a survivor who refused to be silenced. Michael realized he'd crossed a line, but the journalist in him wouldn't let him retreat completely. I didn't mean to suggest. Yes, you did. Meghan cut him off sharply. You meant exactly what you said. You think I should have stayed quiet, smiled pretty, and let them destroy me slowly from the inside. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not built that way. I wasn't raised to accept mistreatment just because it comes with a title. The studio was dead silent except for the quiet hum of cameras still rolling. Everyone present knew they were witnessing career-defining television. The kind of moment that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Meghan, I think we should take a breath here. Michael attempted to regain control of the situation. This wasn't supposed to become so heated. Oh, but it was. Meghan fired back, her composure completely gone now. This was always going to become heated, because you never intended to have a respectful conversation about my charity work. You came loaded for bear, didn't you? You had your gotcha questions ready, your little trap set up. Did you think I was going to sit here and let you tear me apart on national television? I was doing my job, Michael said firmly, though his voice carried less conviction than before. Asking hard questions is what journalists do. Your job? Meghan laughed bitterly. Is it your job to perpetuate lies? Because half of what you've presented as fact this morning are tabloid talking points that have been debunked repeatedly. Is it your job to re-traumatize someone who's been open about their mental health struggles? Because that's what you've done here. Michael's face darkened. Don't question my professionalism or my integrity. I've been doing this for decades. And in those decades, have you ever asked Prince William about consistency in his statements? Have you ever grilled Catherine about her preparedness for royal life? Have you ever demanded that any other member of that family provide proof of their claims about their experiences? The question hung in the air, and Michael's hesitation was answer enough. That's what I thought, Meghan continued, her voice gaining strength from her anger. There's one standard for them and another standard for me. And you're sitting here perpetuating that double standard while pretending to be objective. The situations are different, Michael protested weakly. Are they? Meghan challenged. Or are the people different? Are the women different? Because I notice that the white British-born women in that family get sympathy and understanding, while the biracial American woman gets interrogated about her motives and her truth. Michael stood up straighter, his own anger finally breaking through. You cannot keep hiding behind race every time someone questions you. That's not fair, and it's not honest. I'm not hiding behind anything, Meghan shot back. I'm pointing out a reality that you're either too blind or too comfortable to acknowledge. The coverage of me versus the coverage of other royal women has been demonstrably different, measurably harsher, and you know it. Even if that's true, Michael said, it doesn't make you immune from criticism or accountability. I never said it did, Meghan replied. But there's a difference between fair criticism and character assassination. There's a difference between accountability and systematic destruction. And if you can't see that difference, then you're part of the problem. The tension between them was electric. Two strong personalities locked in a battle, neither seemed willing to lose. Michael, feeling his authority as the interviewer slipping away, made one last attempt to regain control. At the end of the day, Meghan, you made choices. You chose to do the Oprah interview. You chose to make certain claims. You chose to leave the royal family. Those choices have consequences. You're absolutely right, Meghan said, surprising him with her agreement. I did make choices. I chose my mental health over duty to an institution that was killing me. I chose my son's well-being over maintaining a facade. I chose truth over complicity. And I chose my voice over silence. If those choices make me controversial, if they make me difficult, if they make me a problem, then so be it. Michael stared at her, realizing that his strategy had completely backfired. Instead of cornering her, instead of making her look defensive or unreasonable, he'd given her a platform to make her case more forcefully than she ever had before. Do you regret any of it? He asked quietly, perhaps hoping for a moment of vulnerability that might salvage the interview. Meghan looked at him for a long moment, then at the cameras, then back at him. I regret that it came to this. I regret that speaking my truth required leaving a family I wanted to be part of. I regret that my children will grow up knowing that their mother was treated the way I was treated. But do I regret speaking up? Do I regret refusing to be silenced? Never. Even if it meant losing everything. I didn't lose everything, Michael. I lost people and institutions that were never really mine to begin with. But I gained something more valuable. I gained my voice, my dignity, and my freedom. And I gained the knowledge that my children will grow up seeing a mother who fought for herself and for them. Michael nodded slowly, perhaps finally understanding the futility of his approach. Where do you go from here? Forward, Meghan said simply. Always forward. I'll continue my work, continue supporting causes I believe in, continue being a mother and a wife, and I'll continue speaking my truth whether people want to hear it or not. And if the criticism continues, Meghan smiled for the first time since the interview began. But it wasn't the polished media smile she'd started with. It was something harder, more determined. Then I'll continue to rise above it just like I always have. Because at the end of the day, Michael, the people who matter know who I really am, and the people who don't matter can keep talking. With that, she turned and walked off the set, leaving Michael Strahan sitting alone in the aftermath of what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about interviews in television history. The cameras kept rolling as he sat there, perhaps contemplating how completely the tables had been turned, how the hunter had become the hunted. As the credits rolled on this explosive encounter, one thing was certain. Meghan Markle had shown the world exactly why she refused to stay silent, and why trying to silence her was a battle no interviewer was likely to win. If you made it to the end of this incredible confrontation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Do you think Michael Strahan crossed the line? Or was Meghan being too defensive? What would you have asked if you were in that interview chair?